Welcome, everybody, to the very first episode of the Playbook podcast. This is my personal platform from Loveland, or Laserforce Loveland, where we invite guests on to geek out about all things Laser Force. It could be Space Marines 5, it could be Laser Ball, it could be general laser tag tips and tricks, but this is a place for players to come and educate themselves and get better at the game. Today I have on with me Odin's Fist, a current world champion as of just about a month ago from Laserforce Internationals 2023. Odin, how you doing?
I am fantastic, thank you.
Good. I wouldn't hope for anything less for you. Today's topic is simple: 10 scout tips to improve your scout gameplay. We've both written up 5 tips for how to play the scout position in Space Marines 5. And I think we're just going to geek out about it as we go through our tips.
Yeah.
Odin, what's your general impression on Scout? Like, have you played it very much, or?
Oh yeah. In 2018, I was a Scout player on the USA team at Brisbane Internationals.
Mm-hmm.
I've been playing Scout for a while. I've been playing SM5 since 2016 with my first nets in 2017, where I played Scout. So, and I've learned from some of the who I consider to be the best Scout predecessors for me. So I feel like I have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. I think Scout's a great position where you've been able to use your brain and your game theory a lot. Scout's my absolute favorite position. I finally got to play it for a whole tournament at Laserforce Internationals 2023. It's a great time, but beyond that, that's the only tournament I've really gotten to play it, but I think it fits my game style. Anyway,
yeah,
let's go ahead and get started. All right, I'm going to start with tip number 1 here. Watch what other players are doing. This is something you should be doing no matter what role you're playing, but especially on the Scout. Something that a lot of new players will come up and say to me is that they don't really know what they're supposed to be doing. You know, the Heavy's supposed to be protecting the resupplies, the Medic's supposed to be giving lives and keeping themselves safe, but the Scout inherently has a lack of structure, a lack of form to it. So that's part of the beauty of Scout, is what I would say. Watch what other players are doing, and your job, if I were to put it into a word, you could be support for what other players are doing. And that kind of goes into 2 categories. You could be watching what your own teammates are doing, and you could try to help them accomplish their goals, or you could watch what enemy players are doing, and you can try to stop them from completing their goals. Like, for just a couple examples, you know, if your commander is trying to push in and attack the enemy resupply, maybe you strategically position yourself at a cross angle from the commander so that you can help them attack the Heavy, trying to put one in and making it a 2-person attack instead of just a 1-person attack. Or maybe if you see the enemy commander, they're trying to run in on your own resupply, you position yourself behind them so that whenever they try to go in through a certain passage, you keep pegging them in the back and stopping their attempt. What do you think of that, Odin?
Yeah, those are very good. That's a very good overview of the Scout position and kind of what your primary objectives should be. Yeah, I mean, I think that was a pretty good introduction, a good way to start off. And kind of one of my points is don't push yourself to make flashy plays. Like how you said that the Scout's role is support. I agree, and I think that a lot of times with newer Scout players or weaker Scout players or Scout players who have consistency issues, one of their big problems is they can feel like they're not doing enough at times. Mm-hmm. And so they try to do too much. They try to take on these flashy roles. They try to take too much onto their shoulders, but you aren't the carry. Your goal as a Scout isn't to carry. And usually what happens when you do this and you try to play solo or you try to do things on your own as a scout is you're minimizing your own impact on the rest of the game, and you're likely putting yourself in situations where you're going to be deactivated a lot. And having downtime as a scout really sucks because scouts need to be looking for opportunities. And if all of those opportunities are coming around while you're deactivated or in bad positions, then you're not going to be able to capitalize on it. So I think my first main point here would be, like you want to be opportunistic, you want to support your team, and don't try to be a solo player. Don't try to go crazy on your own. Try to be opportunistic.
Could you talk a little more about the word passive? Because I think a lot of players would hear you say, like, you know, you can do more when you're playing passive rather than playing aggressive, playing overly aggressive. Why is passive a good thing?
Yeah, so the thing is, when you're thinking about the structure of Space Marines, it's a lot about control, right? It's your control. You're trying to control your space. You're trying to control the enemy team, push them into bad situations.
Mm-hmm.
And as a scout, you don't have in a hypothetically even match, you don't have the power to control the enemy team on your own. You can't push into the enemy team and guaranteedly, or at least have a strong possibility of putting everybody down when there's 3 guns pointed at you, when there's usually a 3 hit there. There's no need for you to put yourself in that situation and bang your head against those walls over and over. When I say play passive, I don't mean don't fight anyone. I just mean, like, you don't have to be sprinting around the field all over the place. You don't have to be charging into the enemy resupply. You don't have to be charging into enemy players. You can do so much by controlling space and letting your commander know where he has or she has control of the arena, where your team is established, so that your commander can go and attack using, like, really good safe angles, rather than worrying about, oh, well, I might get shot in the back because my scout's just running around second floor and who knows where their scouts are. So especially I think the big emphasis, in my opinion, is the downtime. I think that if you just play, if you're active for most of the game and you're just consistently putting shots into people, you'll do well. Especially, I think a lot of scouts care maybe a bit too much about their personal score. But realistically, if you're just playing smart, playing opportunistically, and getting the shots off when you can, you should be able to rack up points fairly consistently over the course of the game. Versus if you're crashing into enemy teams, like, yeah, maybe you got a few lucky tags off, but then you have to flush all the way out. Maybe you're getting reset. Maybe they're pushing you out because they now see you as, like, a very invasive threat. And so you could be shot down 4 times, and have a lot of downtime where you aren't able to be shooting people. You aren't able to be taking hits out of 3 hits, to be racking up those points. And so that's where it's like, there are situations where it's fine to push in. You know, you can push in with a commander, you can push in as a distraction or to, like, help assist. But for the most part, if you're losing lives as a scout, you want to make sure that there's purpose to it. Like, there's something being gained while you're losing those lives.
Definitely. Yeah, that makes me want to go into my next point here. I'm going to skip down to be a distraction as another way to define your role. I had mentioned before you want to be like a support. Being a distraction is actually a really good way that a scout can impact the game specifically. And what I want to say at the top is a little controversial. It's that scouts don't impact the game as strongly as a 3-hit does, a commander or a heavy. And that's not to say that scouts don't impact the game, like resupplies don't impact the game. Everybody impacts the game significantly. However, when a scout's holding a territory, an enemy 3-hit can come along and automatically defeat them and take the territory back. It's not a matter of who's quicker, except for in some pretty wicked, insane situations, like if a scout's able to juke out somebody, hit them 3 times before they get hit 1 time. But you can't bank on that. Normally, a competent 3-hit can always push out a scout from an area they're holding. Or if a scout's trying to solo push in, a competent heavy is going to be able to keep them out without even trying that hard. So this basically comes from being a 1-hit. You have 1 shield and 1 shot power. And you do have rapid fire, which we'll get to later. That's one of my points. I want to talk about rapid fire. But really, it's not so much that a scout is successful when they come out and they have a really high score. Many times when one of your 3 hits has a really high score, it's because a scout enabled them to get that high score. So it's you kind of want to be an unsung hero. If you are creating opportunities for your 3 hits so that they can come in, impact the game better and get the points, push out the enemy team, defend their own team better, that's a way a scout can impact the game overall much better than by trying to run in and do things by themselves or making those flashy plays you were talking about. Creating opportunities for your 3 hits or being a distraction for the enemy 3-hit is pretty much always a winning deal for the scout. If a scout can get a 3-hit to put all their attention on them while their 3-hit is doing something more important, that's a winning deal for a scout. If I can get the enemy heavy to look at me while my commander is chasing their medic around, oh, baby. It's like me getting the medic hits, basically. You know, you got to think of yourself as part of a team unit. It's not about what you're doing necessarily. Scouts are, they're supports and they are distractions.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of, this wasn't one of my points, but
no, just
along the vein of, you know, where you're impacting the game, something that I try to focus on when I'm playing Scout is to not fight the enemy commander. In my opinion, there's no benefit to fighting the enemy commander. If you trade with him, you take 1 out of him, and he puts you down, that isn't a major benefit to your team. I think there's a difference if you're shooting a commander in the back as he's going into your resupply or something like that. But like if I trade with the enemy commander, he gets a special point, I get put down, and then okay, yeah, now my commander can put him down in 1 shot. But say they mutual, then now their commander's up 2 special points. My commander's up 1 and is on 1 shield power. There's just not a massive benefit to fighting an enemy commander. Like anytime you see a 3 hits back, go ahead and shoot them. But I see a lot of scouts feel like they need to help against the commander, and there's just no reason to square up, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Versus
it's simple. It's simple math, you know. If I shoot the commander, I get 100 points. That helps my team, sure. If the commander shoots me, they get 100 points and they get a special point. Actually, I get a special point too, but my special points give me rapid fire. Their special points give them nukes, which will destroy my entire team if I feed 5-6 special points because I'm trying to fight the commander. That is actively, I am making things worse for my team in general by fighting the commander.
Yeah. And on the other side, my number 1 goal as a scout, usually, there are other situations, you know, you can help relieve some scout pressure or stuff, but my number 1 target is the enemy heavy. Because if you take 1 out of the enemy heavy, even if he puts you down, now your commander can put the heavy down in 1 shot, which is a game changer. Especially if your commander is able to get that shot off just a little faster, especially if the heavy's turning to shoot you, it can completely change the game. And on the flip side, if a heavy knows that you're in a spot and the instant they turn around, you'll shoot them in the back, and they have to constantly be worrying about that, then, you know, you, like you said, you know, you're being a distraction, you're creating more opportunities for your 3 hits, you're creating more pressure, and that's really just the best case scenario.
If I may, this seems to lead into one of your tips: learn some scout plays.
Yeah,
Like what you just said is something that good scouts will do in coordination with their commander when fighting against a heavy.
yeah, and so kind of seemingly contrary to my last point of not pushing yourself to make flashy plays, I think it's important more so for scouts who are learning the game than other positions to learn how to make plays. You are the weakest unit that is out in the field. And because of that, you need to be a little creative. And so some good example scout plays are distracting enemy players. What I just talked about, occupying territory and peeking out and making sure that a heavy knows that they have to be wary of you. Or one of my favorite things to do in situations, this doesn't work everywhere, but in situations that are very, where the resup is set up at like a corner or in a hallway, a scout can attack and push in. And then even if you get put down, you can actually run through the enemy team. Now, if the heavy wants to reset you, they have to turn around the other direction in order to reset you. Or if they want to push you out all the way, they have to go away from their resupply to push you out or turn around. And this creates opportunities for your commander to be able to come in from behind. And this is something where it's not necessarily going to work every time, but if heavy is really just watching one angle and shutting your commander down, it's something where you can coordinate that and make a simple play to hopefully try to break through. So that'd be like my first, like that's a good offensive play. I feel.
That really is. You actually gave me that one during Nats, and I used it against Auckland A with Bean's commander following behind me. It felt pretty good when it worked. Did not win us the game, but it was. It just feels so dirty because you're getting into psychological warfare, and a lot of players don't think about that kind of thing when they're trying to play laser tag. But you don't have the shot power to just run in and beat down an enemy team. I mean, some trickery is one of the scout's greatest tools.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I might get into this more in another video or something. I don't want to ramble here, but
that's what I made this podcast for. Go ahead.
Well, one of my favorite things to play around with in strategizing for the game is, rather than viewing everyone as units, you look at it how it is, right? Like everyone has like a cone of vision. You're not playing the game from a top-down view. You can't see everything around you, and so that's where this idea comes in. You are manipulating the information that the enemy has access to, which, when things come down to a single trigger pull, that can make or break a game.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing how often it does.
Oh yeah. I mean, sorry, I could ramble so much more about it, but
the people want this content.
Well, I mean, people think that just skill level and experience and stuff is the end all be all, but so many times I've seen phenomenal teams lose to teams that are like bottom rung,
because they get creative. They do things that the other team isn't expecting. Or
the good team tries something different and gets caught off guard because they didn't expect a certain scenario to unfold.
Right.
A lot of times it's their ammo dying out early, or somebody getting nuked out really fast, something that they just weren't prepared for. Your commander overextends on 6 lives and gets triple tapped, and all of a sudden they go from 6 lives to 3 without being nuked. There are some crazy things that can happen in the game. That was actually something that happened in the last game of Nationals this year. Was at the start of the game, Rusty ran through our resup, and Kodama, DK, and I shot him at the same time and triple tapped him and took him from 6 lives, or from 9 lives to 6. That can completely swing the momentum of the game. And so, I mean, there's a lot more than just squaring up and, how do I shoot people better? Can I run faster? How can I run around people? And so that's where learning some nice basic scout plays that you can stick to and you can employ, and figuring out when to use them, I feel like is a good starting point for figuring out how to get creative as a scout.
Yeah, definitely. Because if you're in a competitive game and you're pushing with your commander, you're pushing with your other scout, you don't know how many chances you're going to get to do that push. You know, it maybe you're pushing, and in about 20 seconds, the enemy commander is going to nuke, and your medic's going to die, or like the whole game is about to flip on its head in a bad way, and you're going to have to go defend, and you're not going to be coming back. So, winning the trade this time, and not 3 times from now, not 3 attempts from now, can make or break the game. It really can. That's why these scout plays are important to play around with and learn, especially if you can get your team ahead of time to know, hey, you know, if I run through them, or if I give you this signal, I'm going to run through them and you come in right behind me, shoot them in the back. Things like that are, they can change the game in a big way.
Yeah. And I want to drop 2 more scout plays just to give people.
Yeah, there's 2 more you got listed here. I want to know what you mean by them.
But real quick, just on the same running through distracting, another version of it that you can play in arenas with high amounts of visibility. It was one of my favorite ways, or pretty much the go-to scout play in Sacramento, which doesn't exist anymore. But
rest in peace.
It's to coordinate and attack from both sides. And the hard thing about this is this is scout advice, but this play kind of hinges more on the commander. The commander has to pay attention and go in after the scout goes in.
Mm-hmm.
But the main idea is that a scout goes in one angle and the commander goes in the other, and the heavy can't look both directions. And you know, making those coordinated plays is a big deal. And sometimes you just got to communicate it real quick, like, hey, I'm going to go around the other side, and then, you know, the commander can wait. But,
let me throw another one in there on top of that that we use in Loveland. It's the scout goes in front of the commander or in front of the heavy. If you're running right behind each other, the heavy's going to have to shoot the player in front first, or else get tagged down. And then a quarter of a second after that exchange happens, the 3-hit running behind you comes in fully activated, shoots the heavy down, and can get everybody else down. You form kind of like, I don't know what those, like a really fast conga line, basically.
That was it's actually something you can see if you watch some of the games that my team played in Auckland. Is I would kind of partner up with Cayman and help Cayman influence the arena wherever he wanted to be. And there's a lot of instances where you can see the enemy heavy shoots me, and then Cayman shoots down the enemy heavy.
Yeah.
And it's because we're taking advantage of that window, because heavies have the slowest shot speed in the game. Creating windows like that is a really big advantage.
Yeah, it's another example of letting the 3 hits be the ones to mainly impact the game. Because if the 3-hit goes down and then you're up, yeah, good for you. You can shoot, maybe you shoot the heavy down, maybe you get a medic hit, maybe you shoot down 3 people. But what if you got down instead and the commander shot them all down and got 3 special points off of that exchange? That would have been better for your team.
Yeah. So getting into some other plays. One thing so this isn't so much of an individual play as more of like a general point. The rules are a very important part of Space Marines 5. And scouts, I feel, can do so much with the rules and creating trails and forcing enemy players to go one way or another. So, like, as a general advice, try to, when you're deactivated, make sure you're making trails, make sure you're relocating. And if you can, path the most convenient hallways. Like, for example, in Loveland, if I get shot down at Closet, I might make a path straight towards Big Box, because even though, you know, I could path up towards, like, through back of Closet and around the back side of second floor, chances are the enemy players don't want to go that way anyways.
Mm-hmm.
But if I backtrack towards Big Box, then that's the route that they want to take to advance. So if they can't do that, then I'm now limiting their range of motion. Or if they do it, then I have the advantage, because with the 2-second window that you get, a scout should be able to get at least 2 shots into the 3 hit, if not 3, which effectively means that taking that path is no longer an option for them. And doing things like this can create a lot of openings for your teams, especially against players who are really trying to get those resets. If the player goes for a reset and then it tries to get you and you're running away, you're creating these trails, you're limiting where they can go, most of the time people are going to still be looking for that reset. And so they'll stay stepped forward and stepped out. And a lot of times your teammates can shoot them in the back or in the side. And you're kind of not forcing them, but encouraging them to take on bad positioning for themselves.
Right. And you got one more here?
Yeah, and so the other one is like kind of like repositioning and baiting. A lot of times, if you see a 3 hit with like their back turned towards you, it's really tempting to just try and dump all your shots into them. And if you have rapid fire, honestly, I usually go for it anyways. But it
feels so good.
Oh, it feels so good. But a lot of times, especially if they're very close, right? Especially a lot of better players will hear the targeting tone. And so it doesn't even take the first shot for them to realize they have to turn around. So a lot of times you're mutualing. But getting a shot or 2 in and ducking behind a wall is sometimes even more helpful for your team. You're distracting them, they're looking around, they're trying to figure out where they got shot from. A lot of times they'll go try to push you out. You can pull them away from the action. Like in a similar vein, like repositioning, a lot of times 3 hits don't like dealing with scout. So if a scout is holding a particular spot, then when the 3 hit finishes their business, usually their next order of operations is to go push that scout out, because they're like, that was annoying, I don't want to keep dealing with that. So being a nuisance is like one of the best things to do on scout. And if you are being a menace and you realize that the enemy 3 hit is probably like wanting to clear you out now, a lot of times it's simply a matter of moving to another spot where maybe you aren't influencing as much of the field, but you're able to have a really good angle on where you were before. A lot of times you can put 3 into the 3 hit, and if they're running all the way out of the way to try and push a scout out, and then they're getting deactivated for 8 seconds, they're probably going to be pretty frustrated. And now you're giving your team more opportunities to take control of the field.
Yeah. Aiden, I actually have a story involving you and this move. It's from 2022 West Coast in Loveland when you were playing on #stacked team. You were primarily playing Scout that tournament. Your 3 hits were Micro and Scythe, I believe, from Detroit.
Yeah.
So you were playing the Loki's Revengers, the kind of hybrid Loveland A team. We were spreading out our best players, but anyways, the game starts in the Loveland Arena. Everyone's trying to go up top, so my heavy goes up top. I'm playing Commander. I run over and I'm about to fight Micro, and about 20 seconds in, you get behind me and you peg me in the back 3 times during a really critical point in the game when I needed to be fighting Micro, the other Commander. I turn around because I physically can't fight Micro until you're turned off. And so I go, I literally only walked like 15 feet away to go and tag you. And by the time I turned around, my entire team was running down the ramp because Micro and Scythe both pushed in. My heavy can't physically fight them both at once, and my team was done for. We lost. We were elimed in like 5 minutes. Like, if you didn't distract me that one time, I still think about that. I might have been able to stop that from happening. That's how powerful a scout can be, but it wasn't because like you outplayed me face to face. It's because you just made me focus on a less important player and your team got the advantage.
Yeah. And those 8-second openings are a lot bigger than people expect. A lot of times, especially when you're out in the field, oh, well, what can happen in 8 seconds? Well, the answer is a lot.
Yeah. Oh, man, that haunts my nightmares. I hope you know.
Oh, I'm sorry, Luke.
Oh.
I'm not actually sorry because
Oh,
that's
you're
what I
not
wanted
sorry,
to
but
do,
the mistakes are what make you a better player for sure. I've tightened up my commander game. Anyway, so yeah,
those are some scout plays.
those are some awesome scout plays. Thank you for that.
Briefly go back over them for our scout listeners.
Yeah.
Running through the enemy heavy to get them to turn their back, or taking an opposite position of your commander to create kind of a split focus with the enemy heavy. Pulling and taunting or baiting the enemy 3 hits away from the action, and repositioning so that you can stop them from taking back control, or delay them at least from taking back control of certain parts of the arena.
Yeah. Man, that was like a 5-in-1 scout tip. Awesome. Here, I'm gonna go to this next one on my list. Real simple. Focus on your hit differential. This is something I learned in the Detroit arena, and I think it might apply a little more in arenas that are large. But on the whole, I've noticed that really good scout players usually have a high hit differential, and it's indicative of how a scout can impact the game. Let me explain. If you have a negative hit diff on commander or on heavy, it can mean a lot of things because you have 3 shields, and also you're doing jobs where a lot of people are looking at you. However, for a scout, a negative hit diff, it inherently means that you gave away more points than you actually got, because you always have the 1 hit point and the 1 shot power. And so it's always going to be, when somebody shoots you down, you do lose 20 points, but that person just got 100 points. So a scout, even if they're doing an important job, just keeping in mind that having a high hit differential basically means that you're accruing more points than you're giving away for your team, changes the way you play the game. I would much rather allow the commander to be the one that is physically moving into the enemy's space because they have the shield. And I would rather be the person who is sniping from a distance. Something that I like to imagine is that if I'm a scout and I shoot a 3-hit 3 times in the back, I'm essentially a person that has a 3-to-1 shot power rather than 1-1. I mean, if you hit someone in the back and you take them down, it's kind of like you're a mini heavy, as long as they don't see you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And additionally, as we mentioned, it's really good to distract the heavy and shoot the heavy, but anytime the commander shoots you, you got to see that as basically a net negative. Even putting 2 into a commander and you getting shot once, it's debatable as to whether or not that was actually better for your team. Yeah. I always want to be focusing just as much on shooting people as I am avoiding getting shot when I'm playing scout. Getting shot a lot means that I'm bleeding points and special points to the enemy team, and I may be actually hurting them more than I'm helping them.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
And talking about, yeah, I agree. And talking about hit diff, I feel this wasn't one of my points, but I feel like this is an important thing to talk about, is stats.
Stats.
I feel like stats are very,
MVP.
very helpful. I feel like a lot of times newer players can be overwhelmed or don't necessarily know what to look for with stats. And so I think hit differential is a very good stat to look at to see how you were performing. And the overall is very good. But my biggest piece of advice when looking at stats, when you're playing scout, trying to get better, is see who you fought.
Mm-hmm.
If you went 30-30 against the enemy heavy, that was 1-to-1, but that was the best 1-to-1 you could have picked in that game. If you're 30-30 against an enemy scout, then that means that you two were just in a corner, just shooting each other over and over, and neither of you mattered. But 1-to-1 against a heavy creates so many opportunities for your team. Either he's now at 2 shield and your commander can push in, or they need to get reset by their resupply, and they're now deactivated for 8 seconds. And on the flip side, the commander is the absolute worst person to have a 1-to-1 against. And even if you shoot a commander 30 times and they shot you 20 times, the fact that
You gave him a nuke.
beating you up that much, yeah, you're giving the commander a whole nuke, and that is not what you want to be doing. And you know, you don't even have to look at just your hit diff. Look at the enemy commander's hit diff. Who were they getting all of their points off of? Did the enemy commander get all their points off of you? Then that's not the role you want to be filling in the game. And unless you have anything else you want to talk about on this topic, I think that kind of leads into another point that I had.
Yeah, go right ahead. Well, actually, there's a hypothetical I thought of when you were saying that.
Okay.
If 2 scouts shoot each other 30 times in the woods and both die, did either of them impact the game?
Well, they impacted the game about like 100 points per shot each. so
they both hit each other exactly as many times as the other.
I don't know. We'll have to check the MVP to see who activated more rapid fires.
All right, what tip you got?
Don't be a reset.
Don't.
And this ties.
Wait, repeat it for the people in the back.
Don't be a reset. And this ties vaguely into hit differential, because when you're being a reset, your hit diff hurts really, really badly. But yeah, I mean, so when I was putting these tips together, the goal in my mind was, what are things that new, inexperienced scout players need to really know or really get down? The goal is these tips. For me, these tips are things where this isn't a matter of personal skill. It's a matter of if you focus on making sure that you're sticking to these, you'll be a competent scout player. Nobody's going to be upset to have you on their team. And one of the biggest things for that is to not be a reset. If you are deactivated, move to cover. There is no reason for you to sit on somebody and wait to come up. You are not a heavy. You don't have to wait for those. Oh, okay. Well, they were only able to take one out of me off of a reset, so I can come up and put them down. You just don't have a reason to sit there letting yourself be reset bait. And especially, do not sit next to your 3 hits while you're deactivated. You are off. You're not able to shoot anybody. And if your 3 hit gets put down and you're standing next to them, then they are getting beat up. And they're getting pushed very, very, very far out, which is going to put a serious hindrance on their attack. Because there's a huge difference between them being put down for 8 seconds and being able to back out, get into a good spot, and then push back in, and then being put down for at least 12 seconds and losing an extra life and losing points. They're down time in the arena because at least an extra 4 seconds they're deactivated. It gives more time for people on the enemy team who are coming back, maybe for resupply, maybe to cover more ground, maybe to respond to the commander, to come in and be like, oh, there's a commander here, and then push him even further out. Being a reset against your 3 hits is one of the worst things you can do in the arena as a scout. And it's something that we all are going to do at some point, because you can't control the entire game. And you are going to be used as a reset because you exist in the field.
Yep.
But if you are actively sitting next to your 3 hit and you are not moving, you are not making an attempt to get away, then you are being a problem. And I think that, like, yeah, I mean, when
this
I think
is such a good tip.
It's probably if not at least one of, if not the most important tip that I have put here. When I think of scouts that I don't want to play with, it is exclusively scouts that don't move when they're deactivated, who sit there and are resets, who let me get reset several times. That is probably the one common variable.
And I don't think this is a tip that many people inherently understand until they've played 3-hit in a really competitive setting. If you're a newer player, a lot of times you get put on scout early on, and that's what you play, and you're still learning about how resets work. You know they're there, but you're usually thinking about, okay, how am I doing, and who's being a reset for me? And when you're playing 3-hit and you have scouts that, even if they're good, they're doing work out there in the field, if they are the reason that you end up missiled when you thought you were safe because they were just sitting out in a really bad spot, or they didn't move away because they weren't even thinking about you and what you're trying to do. I mean, they're once again, scout. It seems like a big theme from this video is that to be a good scout, you need to not only provide benefit to your team, but you need to not provide like a negative to your team. Yeah. And not being a reset it takes a lot of game sense to really be thinking about your game and everyone else's game at the same time, but you got to do it. You can't just be sitting there alone with your lights off where the enemy can come in and hit you and then hit one of your 3 hits.
Yeah. And I definitely think that like one of the hardest things about like entering the scene and playing scout is it is so easy for you to actively be harmful for your team in a way that for other positions to do, they would have to be shooting you.
Right.
Like for commander to be as detrimental to their team as an inexperienced, unaware scout player is, the commander would have to be shooting their own scouts or missiling them even.
Yeah.
And so that's where a lot of the entry level stuff is damage control. And I know it feels lame to not get flashy advice like, oh, do this, do that. But scout really, like when you're picking it up, comes down to the basics. Make sure you're keeping your phaser up. Make sure you're not being a reset. And like even players who seem to get good relatively quick, a lot of times they're focusing on things like how to pop around a corner really fast and trade with somebody. And a lot of them will miss these things, and what it leads to is inconsistency in really, really, really big flops. When you're getting resupplied and you're being lazy and your gun is down and it's not pointed up and your lights come on and somebody comes into your resupply and you don't get a shot into them and they put everyone down and maybe your resupply got 2 shots into them, that's now your fault. If you didn't get that shot off because you were being lazy with your gun, then you allowed that to happen. And I just really feel like these are crucial steps that you cannot skip over. And they're hard habits to build, especially like, I'm saying don't be a reset if you're deactivated move. Well, what happens when somebody gets reset 4 times while running away and they just keep getting reset no matter where they run to? Well, unfortunately, you still have to keep running. It's not fun, but you're actually influencing the arena so much more than if A, they have enough focus on you that you're being reset 4 times, B, you're making paths around everywhere that you're running.
That's right.
Everywhere you're running, you're denying territory to the enemy team. And C, you're making sure that in order to reset you, their phasers have to point in your direction and not somebody else's direction, which is why it's so critical to move.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have like an end objective, which one of my biggest tips is whenever you're running somewhere, always have a goal in mind. But even if you have no goal, just getting away from your 3 hits is the most important part when you're deactivated.
Yeah, seriously. There's no arena that's so big that running away in a straight line to avoid being a reset takes you out of the fight for more than like 5-10 seconds. Like, don't try to get cute and keep moving to one of your two favorite spots that's in the middle of the action. If you're getting bullied, if you get reset like more than once, really, like I would just completely give up, leave the fight, go somewhere else completely, and then come back once you're reactivated. Even come in from a new angle. I mean, there's just
Yeah.
it's not so much that you need to maximize your upside and keep coming into those really good spots. You also want to make sure you're not creating huge risks of continuing to mess up your own team.
Yeah.
Remember, it's not on you to make the flashy plays. So if you're being a reset, if you're being an active negative detriment to your team, then just remove yourself from the situation.
Yeah.
Which I think could lead to my next point. Choose winning battles. This is actually my last point that I was going to make, but I'm going to bring it up a little bit in the pecking order. The quote that I just wrote is, whatever you do, do it successfully. As we had mentioned in this video, if you're playing Scout, the job that you have is generally in the realm of supporting your teammates and being a distraction, creating openings. You can do a lot with the Scout role. But games are dynamic. You know, it's kind of like chess in that when you start a game, you might have an idea of what the openings are going to look like, but at some point in the game, they always devolve into something completely new that no one's seen before. And part of being a good scout is choosing battles within those weird situations that are going to be of the most benefit to your team. I don't know. I'll make a hypothetical situation. Let's say that your team is trying to kill the enemy medic, and that's maybe that's something that your team does best, and it's something that you've done game after game after game. Your commander and you are really good at it, so you're pushing in, you're doing your scout plays, you're creating openings. But let's say that this heavy, for whatever reason, maybe they have a scout helping them out, and you're absolutely getting shut down. You and your commander are not able to get in. You've tried 5-6 times. You're just bleeding points. It's not working. Do something else. I say to you all, it is okay to give up and do something else well, rather than banging your head against the wall and trying to do what you want to do unsuccessfully. There are so many things you can do as a scout that are of benefit to your team. You can go back to your own defense, and if they're getting pounded, you can literally prevent your medic from losing lives by shooting down the enemy scouts and commander. In the back, without bleeding the points to the commander, as we mentioned, it can be done. You could hold a vital territory and allow your 3-hit to do something else, even get resupplied. You can make trails to protect your team while someone who's critical is getting full. You can be an information beacon for someone else. Like, I don't know, the sky's the limit, really. But I think what separates a good scout from a great scout is that a good scout can do one thing very well, but a great scout can play the role in a bunch of different ways. Some people are only good at killing medics. Some people are only good at being like a sniper in the midfield. But a great scout can change how they're playing based on what their team needs.
Yeah. That's something that, well, something that I would consider like more of like an advanced talking point as advice that kind of ties in is identifying like your win condition or your objective or like what your team needs from you. But a very good way to start on filling your role is realizing what scouts can do and then just picking what you're able to do at the moment. Because, you know, there are some things that very, very high level scout players can pull off. You know, when you're a new scout player, nobody's expecting you to go up against the best players in the world and come flying in and put a heavy down and take the resupply out. Like, that's not expected of you.
No.
You know? And so there are some things that you'll do, and sometimes, yeah, maybe your objective is to try to take one out of the heavy, but you're not able to get into a good spot for it. Maybe like the enemy commander is doing a really good job of taking territory, and you aren't able to get the good angles against the enemy heavy or something. You don't have to be stubborn about it. Figure something else out that you can do. You don't have to say, well, I'm not able to do what I want to do. So, especially when it comes to like this is a team game, and one of the best things you can do is ask your team for help in your objectives. But if you're asking for help as a scout just so that you can be stubborn, then what you're doing is you're monopolizing your probably commander's time.
Yeah.
And
I mean, remember that you're the help usually.
Right. And there's a lot of situations where it's, okay, we have lost this critical point in the arena, and I need my commander to help take it back, and then I can occupy it. And you can communicate that, and you can figure that out. But if you're saying, well, I'm being shut down by the commander when I keep trying to do this thing, and you're not trying to figure out a different angle, you're not trying to figure out something else that you can do to contribute, then I would recommend taking those first steps before you start pulling your team out and trying to get them to focus their game and play around a scout.
Definitely. I'm in complete agreement. Yeah, that was a really good way you put that, of monopolizing your commander or heavy's time. I mean, they have really important jobs that if they don't accomplish those jobs, then the whole game is essentially going to fall apart. But that doesn't mean that you have to fail at your job if one of them is needing some help. I mean, you can, man, like there are just times when you're trying to help out your team, you're doing what is most needed of you, and it's just not working. Well, even if that's what the team needs the most, there might be an opening elsewhere for something that you could do really well that will still help more than what maybe is most needed. I mean, that's pretty high level, because like if my team is getting attacked by 3 or 4 players, they probably need me to be defending. However, if the enemy offense is still going strong, I might just go see if I can get some medic hits while the ammo and medic are alone. And like maybe I can kill out their medic and change the game that way. You're making split decisions that have a big impact on the game in the moment, and you usually don't have time to deliberate it with your team. Choose winning battles. That's my tip. Do something that'll work. Don't be stubborn.
And I think an important thing on that is there's a huge amount of skill expression in the game, and there's a lot of potential for outshooting players and pulling off plays. But I think one of the best things to do as a scout is to take very certain tactics, right? You could hypothetically put all 3 shots into a 3-hit if like squared straight up against them. I mean, I've had it before where a 3-hit has missed a shot, but I don't have any reason to attempt to pull that off.
You can't bank on that.
Because more than likely that will not be the
of the time it's not going to work. Yeah.
And now you're just wasting time and feeding points and specials if it's a commander, which is where other things come in. It's a lot of like scout plays, right? Like a lot of the scout plays do not bank on you making some sort of crazy play. A lot of times when you're looking at positioning and what you're doing as a scout, it's perfectly fine for you to be out traded. That's okay. Maybe you miss a shot. And I think that's why it's so important for beginner players who maybe don't have those mechanics down. It's okay as long as you are taking up good space in the arena. If you are positioned in a way defensively, like say you're playing defensively, you're trying to support your team because the enemy commander keeps crashing in a way where in order for the commander to attack your resupply, they have to be in between you and your resupply. And even better, in between you and your commander, and you're creating these crossfire angles, then maybe you shoot at the enemy commander, maybe you completely miss your shot and they turn around and shoot you. Their back is now to your other teammates. You have done your job now. And that's where, like, I feel like it's a lot better, especially for newer players, to not try to just face off against everybody. Like pick good spots, make sure you're putting yourself in positions where you're providing benefits to the team. And to kind of segue into my next point, if that's all right with you.
Well, wait, real quick. Before you segue, I've never been in an arena where there wasn't like 1 to 3 really solid spots that scouts just stand and rack up tons of points. Usually it's not somewhere right in the middle, not right at the front door of the enemy base, but it's somewhere like where they have a lot of vision and a lot of opportunities to peck people in the shoulder and the back.
Yeah.
You know, those are like those solid bets that you can make to do something that's a winning battle.
Yeah. And that segues perfectly into my next point, which is try to cover the arena. To just kind of briefly introduce this point, when it comes to midfield and like game control, in my opinion, as a very, very simple rundown of it, the role of the commander is to take control of areas, and the role of the scout is to hold control of areas. Scout can sit somewhere and control the arena. Commander is much better served pushing people out of position.
Yeah.
And so when I say try to cover the arena, I feel like people, even advanced players, have a tendency to tunnel vision. If I am back near the resupply, then I'm a defensive scout. If I'm near the enemy resupply, then I'm an offensive scout. But I feel like unless you are specifically making a coordinated play with one of your 3 hits, the best thing to do as a scout is to cover as much of the arena as possible. And there are a lot of times where you can be near the enemy resupply and be covering backwards towards your team and be shooting people in the back and to be providing really good cover fire.
Enemy team's not going to be expecting that anyway.
Yeah, I would assume that was roughly where I was in that example that you gave, where I put 3 into you.
Yeah, you were in prime spot to be looking up at my resupply, but you turned around. You know, I thought I had that whole area controlled by my scouts.
Yeah, and that's kind of like it's a pretty straightforward tip, and I don't mean that you can't do things offensive or defensive, and I don't mean that you always have to be watching the whole arena, but that is where your main focus should be, because when your commander is figuring out their game plan, their first thought is typically, where are my scouts? Like, where do we have control of the field, right? The second thought is usually like, where's the enemy heavy at? How are they positioned? What do I need to do to get past? But a very important thing is what angles are covered and what angles are not. And not to mention that you just provide so much more to the team by being able to observe so much more of the field, provide more information, provide more supporting fire. And a lot of times, these create perfect segues. I love being in a very forward position as a scout, being able to shoot back towards my team, because my job isn't to crash into the enemy resupply. So I'm not doing that anyways. But I can be here and I can be providing support to my team. And then if I hear the enemy heavy gets resupplied, if I hear my commander trade with them and say heavy's down, if I'm getting this information that lets me know that their backline's exposed, then I can push in and I can try and make plays or push the resupply out without having to confront the 3 hit. And so I have access to make these offensive plays while being able to play defensive and control a lot of the field, which is just so potent.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just being opportunistic. It's not being like the tunnel vision, like you said, only gives you in your mind the one option in front of you, and it kind of has to work. But, you know, if you're covering everything around you, you're just going to find opportunities falling into your lap, ways you can impact the game on both offensive and defensive fronts.
Yeah. And you know, on the opposite side, on defense, it can feel really good to take like opposite angles of your resupplies and shoot people down coming in, but you should also be making sure that you are able to provide. You can watch the rest of the field. You can keep their scouts from pushing out. You can provide supporting fire into the enemy heavy potentially. Um, I think in Loveland, a very easy way to see and experience this is in big box. If your team has Fortress and you are in big box, it is really easy to have that cross shot up onto third floor for if the enemy 3 hits are pushing in across third floor.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you can lean over the wall or you can peek down the middle of second floor and you can exert a lot of forward pressure. Anybody who's backtracking in a closet, you can have vision of. You can oftentimes get angles on the enemy heavy if they're standing out a little further. And you can even like move around a little bit. You don't, when I say hold territory, I don't mean you stand there like a turret, right?
No.
Moving around and getting more angles and vision is very key.
You're using
so,
the territory. You're using its angles and its advantages.
Yeah, and so you know, you could push out a big box to make an attack against the enemy heavy to help your command push in, but at the same time, you're still holding that ground next to your resupply. That's very crucial to your team because that's ground that you don't want the enemy team to have. And so, yeah, I think, you know, try to cover the arena and don't let yourself get tunnel vision into one objective. Like, I'm forward, so I need to be crashing into the enemy resupply, or I'm back, so I have to be defending against people who are coming in.
No, I love that tip. The arena it makes me think of the most is Syracuse, which is one giant single floor maze. And there's not really a spot where you can like even see all the way one team's defense and one team's offense. But I find that if I'm attacking and I just turn around and run back to my own defense, I usually find one or two people's backs turned to me because they're only looking forward at my heavy. And it's just like pinging back and forth. You're always finding people like just not expecting you to be there.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right, we both got one more tip here. Mine is very simple, but I think it's something that new players don't use very often. It's just good to know. Use your rapid fire, after you get resupplied. If I have a confession for all of you, it's that for about the first 5 years of me playing Space Marines 5, and yes, even including a bunch of away tournaments in there, when I played Scout, I just didn't use my rapid fire. I didn't understand the point. It didn't seem like it made that much of a difference. And I would often just forget that I had it. Plus, whenever you get resupplied, you'll lose the rapid fire, so it felt like it was always gone anyway. And it was just sort of a back of my head thing. But I'm telling you now, I'm the world's biggest component of rapid fire. Sorry, proponent of rapid fire.
Yeah.
The difference is quite noticeable. Even when I am using rapid fire and another scout has not used rapid fire, the difference is noticeable when we're fighting face to face and we're trading. The shot just comes out the moment you pull the trigger, as opposed to having this very slight delay. Rapid fire, it also gives you a reasonable capacity to duel 3 hits as needed. There's ways where if 3 hits coming in to attack me and I get really low to the ground or I stand somewhere they're not expecting, if they do miss that first shot, I can take them down with the 3 hit rapid fire tap before they have a chance to tag me that second time.
Yeah.
It allows you to shoot 3 hits in the back effectively before they have a chance to turn around and hit you. It allows you to run in on resupplies and shoot both of them down before either of them shoot you. It's like a superpower. I think every scout should work up to get 10 special points and use their rapid fire, but the caveat is just use it after you get resupplied. In general, the script for how I play Scout is I go out, I try to get my 10 special points, and if I'm in a good spot, I keep playing. If I'm not in a good spot, I go back and get resupplied. And after you're full, use rapid fire, because then you are basically maximizing the amount of time you're going to be able to use it until the next time you get resupplied. If your medic or ammo decides to tap you, you lose it. So it's a simple tip, but use your rapid fire, comma, after you get resupplied.
Yeah, and really use your rapid fire.
Use it, just milk it.
I know there's going to be some people who listen to this and think, well, my accuracy is really bad, or I keep running out of shots, and so I don't want to use rapid fire and hold the trigger down and waste the shots. And what I'll say to that is activate rapid fire and then just pull the trigger for each shot.
Yeah.
It gets rid of the pause in between shots. It gets rid of the delay. You can still individually pull each of your shots, but it gives you the opportunity to fire them off so much faster.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a serious improvement. I mean, I have never trigger held. I have never in my time playing SM5 held the trigger down.
Never.
With
Me
rapid
neither.
fire. And so many times like you said, like I've positioned myself in a way to where the enemy 3-hit missed a shot, and I took 3 out of them. And even if you don't outplay a 3-hit, if you're now getting 2 into them instead of just 1 when you trade with them or something, you're gaining more advantages by having it up. It's just such an important thing, especially if you're making offensive plays. Having the faster shot rate when you're having to turn and shoot multiple people is a huge game changer. Yeah.
I don't know the math. I don't know the math for how quick you can fire off 5 shots of rapid fire versus 5 individual, but I imagine it's like 1/3 of the time or something like that. The difference is incredible. There was one time in Nats where I was able to just sneak up into the nest. I run in, and just for a split second, everybody had their backs turned to me, just because I think someone else was attacking from the other direction. Like, they saw me. The guns were about to turn on me, but I shot down 4 people with rapid fire before any of them turned their gun to shoot me. Like, the difference is insane. It's something that makes the scout a special position and not just a standard unit.
Yeah. And use your rapid fires.
Use it. Milk it.
Do you have anything else you want to?
No, but you got one more tip.
I do. And going back to basics, don't crowd the resupply.
Don't do it.
Scouts can last for a long time with much less resupply than everyone else in the game. Being in the resupply for extended periods of time or coming back over and over again makes everyone else's job harder. Even if your team is dominating the game, the fact that there's an extra body in the way of resupplying people means that everything now has to slow down. They have to fit you into the rotation. And all of that is amplified so much when you're losing the game, or when you've lost momentum of the game. When enemy players are pushing in and there's now an extra body in the way of everything, messing up rotations. Maybe they're getting reflex shots. Maybe cross-firing's happening in the resupply. It's just not. And you're taking a body out of the field.
Yeah.
And I think one of the worst habits of this is coming back for resupply, because I feel like a lot of scouts will come back for resupply because they feel like they're not doing well out in the field. They're like, well, I'm not doing well here, so I'm going to go back for resupply and reset. And if you don't need resupply, please just don't do that. You can go other places in the field and reset. There's always going to be somewhere that you can go in just about every field, unless you're getting smashed in a way where it probably doesn't matter anyways.
Mm-hmm.
There's usually somewhere that you can go to recover. You don't want to be getting in the way of your team's resupply. And building on to that, I feel like scouts really just cannot afford to be greedy in any aspect of the game. And I feel like that, ties to resupply as well. Don't be greedy about resupply. The most important thing for a scout is to get lives. Because you just get shot so much faster than you get lives. And when you're talking like high competitive levels, even teams, realistically, scout 3 hits or 3 hits, scout hit diffs are pretty close to that. 1. That's just heavy in SM4. Obviously scouts should have positive hit diffs, but they're usually pretty close to 1 when you're talking like the highest, most competitive games. And so, if you're losing 1 life and 1 shot, you are going to need lives so much more than you need shots. Mm-hmm. And so, the most important thing is getting lives. If you have 0 shots and you just got like 3 taps of lives because the ammo kept getting put down or they kept missing doubles or something, mm-hmm. and your team is feeling pressure, still just leave. You may be on 0 shots, but you have enough lives to run around until your team can get their crap together. Mm-hmm. And if you're in there prohibiting them from playing defensively the way that they need to and your reset gets flushed, then you might never get those shots. Mm-hmm. It sucks. Playing scout can be really hard sometimes, but at the end of the day, you are not the most important game deciding factor on your team.
It's true.
Scouts are not useless. They have so much impact on the game. They're so important. Mm-hmm. It is so important to have a good scout. Mm-hmm. But you do not need to monopolize the resupply nearly as much as your heavy and your commander do. Just never.
Man, I this is the other thing that makes scouts a special position and not just like a random unit. A lot of players don't realize this even like well into their SM5 careers. If a heavy gets resupplied, they get 3 lives and 5 shots. If a scout gets resupplied, they get 5 lives and 10 shots. That's essentially double in both categories. So something that the scout specializes in is that they can take 3 doubles and get half of their stuff back to being full, and they can go out for a very long time doing that. They can take 1 and they can go out for like a whole minute and not need to come back. Unless you know that the enemy commander is holding like 3 or 4 nukes, then you don't need to be worried about dying out of the game. If you're sitting at 10 lives, just go. Just go for a minute. You remember, be support, be a distraction. The 3 hits need space to get stuff done, and that's when the scouts need to be the heroes and go out and let them get that resupply. For all those reasons that you just said, like, it takes a fair amount of humility to play scout. Being okay, being not the hero, not the most important or impactful person, but empowering your 3 hits to do their jobs. And this is one way that you help them. And if I can throw in a bonus tip involving my resupply, when I play scout, if the game is going well at the beginning, something I sometimes do, just depends on how much I'm really needed. Sometimes I go back and I get full within like the first 30 seconds of the game starting, because I will get full super quickly, and by the time everyone else starts coming back for their resupplies, I'm still out in the field with about 3/4 of all my supplies still, and I can stay out there and have a natural rotation beginning already.
Yeah. I think a good thing to pull off there, if you can, is if your team is doing well at the start and you have that forward pressure, is to try and get your resupply to fill you while you're in the field, because that way you can still control territory while getting resupplied. And it's perfectly fine for a scout to hang back closer to the resupply and not be in the action, but still just holding a position and be getting resupplied at the same time. It's something that's like a lot rougher to do as a 3-hit because for one thing, when you're getting resupplied as a 3-hit, you want to minimize the time that it takes for you to get full. You have to get filled as quickly as possible. So being in a vulnerable position is rough, but as a scout, it's fine if somebody comes and pushes you out of there. You just go back, you go somewhere else, you go back to your resupply if you really need it. But yeah, I mean, get resupplied. Don't be greedy about it. Realistically, if you end the game with one shot as a scout, you had
perfect.
The perfect
that was perfect. Yes.
Phenomenal. Oh, you don't need 50 shots at the end of the game.
Players don't get that. Yeah, you should in a perfect world try to end the game with 1 life and 1 shot, or maybe 0 shots, as long as you use that last shot at the last second.
Yeah, I think it's fine to have a lot of lives.
No, I mean, don't actually follow that advice. What I'm saying in theory is that if you ended the game with 1 life, that means you didn't waste time getting 1 extra resupply of lives that you didn't actually need to live out the game and complete your goals.
Yeah. Well, if you end the game on 50 shots, that means that you got resupplied 5 times for those shots. You spent an extra 40 seconds at least getting resupplied. And honestly, probably more, because if it's split up and now you're counting your time running back to resupply and then redeploying, or wait time in between getting resupplied while you're staying up to try and defend because you think someone's coming in and they aren't, like, you're spending at least 40 seconds of your game getting resupplied with shots that you do nothing with. There's just no need for it. And so many scouts get more resupplied than they need, especially in shots. And that's something where if you're sitting there, no, I need doubles as a scout with 30 shots, just take the lives really fast and get back out there. Like, you don't need a million shots. If you are burning 30 shots into the enemy team and not just blowing them into a wall before you need lives, then your team is just going to win the game. Like,
it's a good problem to have.
We when my team and Nats we were pretty on top of resupply. I feel like for the most part, people just always were pretty healthy in lives and shots.
You might be a little biased, but yeah, you guys are pretty good at
it. No, for sure. There's some bias in anything I'm saying about
just
my team.
Giving you a hard time.
You know, I hold my teammates in very high regard.
Odin played ammo for their team, just so everyone's aware.
I did. But like Thunder, for example, played phenomenally well. Had a very great hit diff.
Best in the tournament
long, which means that you're putting out so much work per lives that you're losing, and wasn't slacking in the points department either. It's not that he had a great hit diff, but it's because he sat in a corner and only shot 2 people a game. He was doing work, and he rarely came back for resupply. I think almost every game he came back for resupply twice, and most of the time he asked for lives. I know it's hard, especially when you play Commander and you come back saying that you need lives more than shots. It can be humiliating. Like, that can feel embarrassing. It's like, oh, I got beat up and I didn't shoot anybody. But as a scout, it's perfectly reasonable. And, you know, you were talking about it takes humility to play scout, and it really does. Sometimes you just need a couple taps of lives because you got beat up and you need to get back out there, but that's perfectly fine. That's okay. Just don't hog your resupply. And make sure that you're in the field. If you're spending, 5 minutes of the game in your resupply because every time you get shut down, you go back into your resupply, then you're wasting 5 minutes of the game. You're a valuable asset to your team. So go out there and be useful. Not to, I might be sounding a little toxic here. I value all of you, especially if you're listening to this. That means that you care about the game.
Yeah,
so
seriously.
Thank you. That is really what matters the most to me. I know my voice changes when I play laser tag, and I know I can sound very rude when I say, hey, you need to be doing this. if you're like, oh, okay, and you're like, making an effort to change it, then it's fine that your gun was down, right? I mean, I don't want it to happen, but even great players will put their gun down sometimes. But if I say, hey, you need to keep your gun up, and you put your gun up, phenomenal, thank you. Like, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm not trying to call you out. I don't hate you. I'm just reminding you because that could be very pivotal in the next 2 seconds. So thank you to everyone who's listening to this and everyone who's trying to improve their scout gameplay. If you listen to these tips, I would love to have you on my team. I'll put my phone number in the description.
Oh, I'm on it.
If I could have a scout that doesn't be a reset, doesn't crowd the resupply, doesn't try to make flashy plays and be the hero.
Everyone's going to love
chooses
you.
Winning battles.
Everyone's going to love you. Yeah, I mean, to wrap things up, those are our 10 tips for Scout. And Odin, I wanted to ask you, what is one thing you hope the listener will take away from this episode? For me, I'm actually just going to expand on what you just said. Like, if there's one thing you can take away, it's that I hope the listener will realize that these are things that you slowly build up over time through experience. Getting these tips and implementing them are two different things. Going to play in tournaments and realizing, oh my gosh, I was a reset for the enemy team like 3 times in a row, and that's why we lost that game. That's the best way to get it in your head not to be a reset. Trying out the scout plays with a team is the best way you're going to integrate that into your gameplay over and over again. These are just building blocks. And as you play, you're going to have your wins and your losses, but the important thing is never to give up and say, I'm not going to be any good at this. I've seen players who play for like a decade, and the difference is significant over the course of that time, what experience does for a player. We hope you'll take this and maybe even listen to it multiple times. That's the best way to help integrate some of these tips in your head and the game theory. But really, you got to go out and implement them yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my big takeaway is these are the fundamentals of what gives value to a scout. And nobody, you could find me the best scout player out there. Nobody is 100% successful with all of these. You don't have to beat yourself up, but if you're focusing on these, you will improve. You will do better. You will be noticeably beneficial to your team. Mm-hmm. And take it step by step. Take it one thing at a time. Okay, I'm going to focus on not crowding the resupply this game. I'm going to try and be efficient with how I get resupplied. Great. You don't have to do all these at the same time. You can implement them as you pick up the game. Mm-hmm. Okay, this game I'm going to focus on covering the arena. Just take it bit by bit. Try to really learn them and integrate them into your gameplay, and you'll notice that you'll improve significantly. And I hope that having this guidance allows you to do it quicker than the way that I had to learn, which was going and screwing up 12 times in a row until I figured out why I was screwing up. Or
me. Same story.
Yeah. And, hopefully, this provides a little guidance. You can say, okay, I'm going to focus on this game. I'm going to try and change these up. And you can really start implementing this into your gameplay. And like I said, if you can implement these into the way that you play Scout, I would love to have you on a team.
All right, that's going to do it for us today. If you have any feedback for the first episode of the Playbook, I'll leave it in the comments below, because I have a feeling that we'll be putting out some more of these, specifically having Odin back on. There's plenty more that we've discussed, and the original point of doing this was we really need to just take these conversations we're having anyway and put them in a recorded spot so other people can kind of hear them as well.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of hiding tips. I will talk about laser tag, and you all can listen to it.
Yeah, and honestly, Odin's a great person to message if you're trying to get advice as well. I'm sure it's you know, like you said, we'll put the phone number in the description.
Well, thank you. I'll take that as praise. I love talking about laser tag. If you want to talk about laser tag, I'll talk about laser tag with you. It's as simple as that.
Maybe you'll even have your own channel at some point. Anyways, that's it for now. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Play Scout good. Don't crowd the resupply and don't be a reset.
Use your rapid fire.
Use your rapid fire.